Friends, an incident that made everyone's hair stand on end. How did the 4 unmarried daughters of a poor mother become pregnant? Who are the fathers of these children? This incident shocked the entire village. How did the 4 young girls of the same house get pregnant? This heart-wrenching incident must be heard. Like the video and subscribe. So that you continue to receive such interesting and rare incidents. There was a widow who had 7 beautiful daughters. She had no son, and all 7 daughters were very beautiful. These 7 daughters were very pious. This old woman gave her daughters a very good education. Their lives turned into a nightmare when 4 of the old woman's daughters became pregnant. And the surprising thing was that these girls did not know whose child it was. And when the summary of the story is that who is the one who impregnated these 4 girls, the ground will slip from your feet. The story goes like this, that once there was a king's court, and the king was sitting in his court, listening to the pleas of all the petitioners. Among all those people, an old woman came in, crying and extremely distressed. The king looked at the old woman and said, "Mother, what troubles you?" The old woman looked around the court and remained silent. At this, the minister, in anger, spoke. "Mother, tell us what your problem is. Why are you looking here and there? Tell us your trouble so we can find a solution for it." The old woman gathered her courage and said to the king, "The trouble I have, I cannot share it in front of everyone. So please, come with me alone and listen to my words. I am a widow. I have no son, and I live alone with my 7 daughters. If I reveal my problem in front of everyone, I fear that my daughters might face difficulties, or someone might break into my house in the middle of the night. That is why I wish to share my problem with you in private. I am afraid that my girls will not get any trouble. No one will enter my house in the middle of the night. So I want to share my problem in private." The king started thinking about the fact that so many people had come here, and everyone had shared their problems in front of everyone. But what was the issue with this old woman? Why didn't she want to share her problem in front of everyone? The king said, "Mother, do not worry. Tell us your problem in front of everyone. These people are my trusted men." The old woman replied, "No, king, I cannot say it in front of everyone." The king stood up and said, "Take this old woman to my chamber so that I can listen to her." 2 guards took the old woman to the king's chamber. When she entered, the king asked, "Mother, tell me, what is your problem?" The old woman fell at the king's feet and started crying. The king said, "Mother, tell me what the matter is. My heart is sinking thinking about what could be. So serious that you needed to tell me in private. I cannot bear the thought that in my kingdom there is a woman so distressed, and I do nothing to ease her pain. That is simply not possible." The old woman, sobbing, said, "King, I am a widow. It has been a long time since my husband passed away. I have no son, only 7 daughters. I work in the houses of wealthy people, washing their dishes and clothes to earn a living. And I work in their homes, and the leftover food I get from their houses. And the money I earn from my hard work is what I use to run my household. And with that money, I manage my home and thank Allah. I have never complained to anyone that I live such a life of poverty. My life was going on like this when one day, my eldest daughter fell ill. I took my daughter to the doctor. The doctor said, 'Your daughter is pregnant.' Hearing this, the ground slipped from under my feet. My daughter isn't even married, so how did she become pregnant? When I brought my daughter home, I started beating her and asked, 'Tell me whose child this is?' I beat my daughter a lot, and she started crying bitterly. She said, 'Oh, mother, believe me, I don't know whose child this is. I have never even talked to anyone. You know, I never went outside the house and never even made eye contact with anyone. Oh, mother, believe me, I don't know how this child came into my womb.' Then the mother believed her daughter's words. I told the king that I was convinced my daughter was not lying. And after a few more days, I became even more certain that my daughter was telling the truth. The old mother tearfully told the king that she had accepted the situation with patience. And after 9 months, my daughter gave birth to a son. We were forced by circumstances to start raising that child. And 2 or 3 months later, my younger daughter became pregnant. I took my younger daughter to the doctor, and the doctor confirmed that she was indeed pregnant. Hearing this, my heart was struck with a deep shock. I began to wonder who was doing this to my daughters. No one comes to our house, and my daughters don't go outside either. I left my situation in Allah's hands, praying that He would reveal the truth to me. Then, my second daughter also gave birth to a son. After that, my third daughter became pregnant. Later, my third daughter, who was only 14 years old, also became pregnant. I was devastated. I was ruined. I had no idea how all of this was happening in my own home. Hearing this heartbreaking story, the king was astonished. "What kind of story are you telling, old mother?" The old woman fell at the king's feet and pleaded, "Oh king, I want justice. I need to find out who is doing this terrible thing to my daughters. King Salamat, we have come to you for justice. Please capture this criminal. I do not know when he comes to our house or how he manages to do all this." The king listened to the entire incident and said, "You have come now, when even your youngest daughter is pregnant. You should have come when your first daughter was pregnant. If you had spoken up then, your other 3 daughters would not have suffered the same fate. It is poor people like you who swallow their pain out of fear of disgrace, and that poison keeps eating you up from the inside. Then, when you can no longer bear it, you come forward and say that you have suffered a great injustice. Tell me, mother, are you also one of those people?" The old woman accepted her mistake and said, "I should have come earlier, but I have come now in the hope that I will find out who the person is who made my 4 daughters pregnant without us even realizing it." The king, who had a big heart, said, "Mother, now you go home. This is no longer your problem. It is my problem. I cannot tolerate that in my kingdom a woman is suffering so much pain. A beast is oppressing an innocent woman and I sleep peacefully. I would be cursed as a king if I let that happen. So now you go home." The old woman wrapped her shawl around herself, stood up, and left for her home. The king then returned to his throne and continued, listening to the grievances of the people. But his mind remained fixated on the old woman's story. Even as he listened to other issues, his thoughts kept drifting back to her. When he had finished hearing everyone's problems, he went to his chamber and summoned his minister. The minister entered the room, looked at the king's face, and asked, "Your Majesty, why do you seem so troubled? What did that old woman tell you that has left you so distressed?" The king said, "I don't understand how such evil people exist in my kingdom. Do they not fear the painful punishment we will give them once we find out who they are?" The minister, worried, asked the king, "Your Majesty, please tell me what exactly that old woman said to you that has made you so troubled." The king then narrated the whole incident to the minister and said, "There is a dangerous man who is destroying that household. I can't understand who he is or how he manages to enter their house. He impregnates the daughters, and they don't even realize it. How is this possible? This man is so bold that he has already impregnated a poor mother's daughters. 3 of them have already given birth, and the 4th one is currently pregnant. The remaining 3 daughters are also at risk. We must find out who this person is and how he is doing all of this without anyone noticing." The king and the minister then started thinking about how to catch the culprit. After a while, the minister said, "Your Majesty, an idea has come to my mind." The king eagerly asked, "Tell me quickly, what idea do you have?" The minister replied, "Your Majesty, even the walls have ears. Let me whisper it in your ear." He then leaned closer and shared his idea with the king, who found it agreeable. After that, the minister took a goat and went to the old woman's house around 9 to 10 at night. When the old woman saw him, she was surprised and asked, "Oh, minister, what are you doing here at this hour?" The minister replied, "Mother, do not worry. The worries you conveyed to the king have deeply troubled him." Upon seeing the goat in the minister's hand, the old mother curiously asked, "What are you going to do with this goat?" The minister replied, "Speak softly and let me come inside the house first. After that, I will explain why I have come here." Once inside, the minister told the old mother, "Today, I have come up with a plan. We will use this goat as bait and present it before that person, and then we will catch him. You and your daughters must remain silent and just watch how we trap him. That is why all of you should sleep peacefully tonight. If our plan succeeds, we will finally know who the man is that got all 4 of your daughters pregnant without anyone finding out." Saying this, the minister took the goat to the roof and tied it there. Then, he quietly left the old mother's house. While leaving, the minister instructed 2 of his guards to keep a close watch around the house. He then reminded the old mother and her daughters once again, "No sound should come from your house. Do not let that man suspect that you are awake, or that you have set a trap to catch him." After that, the minister went to the palace to meet the king. The king was already very worried about this matter. Upon seeing the minister, he immediately asked, "Minister, have you delivered the goat as we discussed?" The minister replied, "Yes, your majesty. As per our plan, the goat has been delivered to the old mother's house." The minister, after explaining everything, said to the king, "Your majesty, you should also go to sleep now." But the king replied, "How can I sleep? That widow has suffered greatly at the hands of this man. I will not rest until he is caught and punished." The king then waited, hoping that the culprit would fall into their trap. As half the night passed, a shadow appeared on the ground near the old woman's house. When the goat, tied to the roof, saw the shadow, it started crying loudly. At that moment, the night was silent, and the loud cry of the goat echoed through the stillness. Hearing the goat's cry, the two soldiers who were hiding near the old woman's house became alert. They immediately understood that someone had entered the house. The minister then told the old woman, "The purpose of tying this goat to the roof was exactly this, that when someone enters, the goat will cry out, alerting us so that we can catch the intruder." As the person entered the room, the soldiers became fully aware that someone had broken in. The old woman and her 7 daughters also realized that someone was inside their house. The silence of the night made the goat's cry even more noticeable, confirming to everyone that an intruder had arrived. As soon as the goat cried, the soldiers rushed inside. When the intruder saw that everyone was awake, he tried to escape. But before he could flee, the soldiers at the back door captured him. The man had wrapped his face with a black cloth to avoid recognition. The soldiers immediately removed the cloth from his face. When the old woman and her 7 daughters saw his face, they were utterly shocked. By the time all this happened, morning had arrived, and the king's court was in session. The captured man was brought to the court, bound in chains and made to kneel before the king. His hands were shackled and his face was still not clearly visible. The old woman and her 7 daughters also arrived at the court. The king ordered all other people to leave, allowing only the minister, the old woman, her daughters, and the captured man to remain. The king then questioned the man. "Did you not fear that if you were caught, your punishment would be nothing less than death?" He then commanded, "Remove his mask and show me his face." When the man's face was revealed, the old woman, in utter disgust, spat on him. The king, too, was deeply disturbed upon recognizing the man. To everyone's shock, the culprit was none other than the uncle of these girls, their own father's brother. He had been assaulting them in the darkness of night, making them pregnant without their knowledge. Yet, one question remained. How had he managed to do this without the girls realizing? The king, filled with rage, asked him, "Why did you do this to them? You are their uncle, a father figure to them." At that moment, the old woman slapped her brother-in-law across the face. The king, furious, asked, "Do you not feel any shame?" After that, the girl's uncle gathered the courage to respond in front of the king and said, "I am the uncle of these girls, and it would be better if you stayed out of our family matters." The king heard this and immediately drew his sword, placing it on the man's neck. He said, "Tell me the truth. Why did you do this to these girls?" The man replied, "My elder brother loved me dearly and cared for me a lot. He was older than me, and when he got married, I remained unmarried. My elder brother always looked after me and worried about me since I was younger than him. But after his marriage, when his daughters were born and all the responsibilities fell upon him, he started paying less attention to me. He became more focused on his wife and daughters. Because of this, a distance started growing between us brothers. I was furious that my brother had shifted his attention away from me and no longer cared for me, as he used to. Since I was alone and unmarried, I began to hate my brother. This hatred soon extended to his wife and daughters as well. Then my elder brother passed away. As his eldest daughter grew up, she became very beautiful, and I started developing feelings for her. I asked my sister-in-law to marry her eldest daughter to me, but she refused. My brother's daughters were growing up, and they were all very beautiful, yet their marriages were not happening anywhere. Whenever I looked at my brother's daughters, I felt a deep attraction toward them. Evil thoughts consumed my mind, and I desperately wanted to be close to them. I wanted to experience their pleasure. I was confused because these girls were not getting married, and I had an idea in my mind that I should make them pregnant before they get married and have fun. And I got a devil in my heart, and I had an idea in my mind that I will do all this. How did I go to a hakim and took native herbs from him and asked him to give me some herbs that if I smell someone, they will not wake up for 4 or 5 hours. And that's how it happened. Pata and I used to do my work. He would do his work, and when he started to go back, he would fix his clothes perfectly so that he would not even suspect it. And I would calmly do my wrong work and go to my house from there. And no one would even know that anything happened here at night. And when my brother's daughters woke up in the morning, they did not even know what had happened to us in the night. And this was many times in the work. I have been doing this for years, but I made this mistake. If I had realized seeing this goat tied on the roof, I would not have been caught. I did not know that this goat was tied to catch me as bait. Seeing this goat, I felt that my sister-in-law had tied this goat on the roof for milk. Did not know that this goat was tied to catch me as fodder. Seeing this goat, I did not know that this goat was tied to catch me as fodder. Seeing this goat, I felt that my sister-in-law had tied this goat on the roof for milk. He points to the vizier, and the vizier takes out his sword and cuts the man's neck, after which his body aches for a while and then becomes cold as a punishment, and Ging Salamat says to the old woman that we have caught your culprit and punished him. But if there is ever any problem like this, then immediately go to someone big. Be sure to advise and let me know so that you can avoid another big trouble. If you want to see more stories like this, please subscribe to the channel and share the video.